find, that reminded me to record, by the way, if you just got a little message. You can find any of our upcoming webinars and registrations as well there. So that being said, let's go ahead and really get into the meat of things. Tonight, I'm going to focus a little more on social emotional resources that you can take away and actually use with your students. These resources tonight can be used in the in-person classroom, but they can also be used in a virtual classroom or even in both if you are still using, the hybrid method at your school. So no matter what your classroom looks like right now, you should be able to gather something from tonight. All right. So I have a huge list of tools that I would love to show you. I'm not going to get to all of these tonight. I'm probably only going to get to about 4 of them, honestly. So what I want you to do is choose the tools that we focus on first tonight. So I would like you to either go to slido.com on your device, or you can open up the camera on your cell phone or iPad or whatever you're using. You can point it at this QR code and it will take you directly to this site where you get to vote for the 3 tech tools that you would like to see me cover tonight. And I'm going to give you about a minute to do that. And once those results show up on the screen, I'm going to write them down and then I will present in the order that we see them in this list. So go ahead and take a minute to do that. Oh, I see some coming in already. And I'll give you a little bit of time here to get that done. And while you're doing that, while you're voting, what we're doing right now, voting on how we want to learn tonight, is an additional social emotional learning skill that you can use in your classroom with your students. And I know tonight we're kind of voting on what we want to learn about. And as teachers, we don't always have that much freedom because, we have curriculum and standards and pacing calendars, but you can certainly give your students choices on how they would like to learn that content. So you might prepare an activity, an algebra activity in Nearpod, one in Jamboard, and one in Epic. And you might give your students the option, hey, the same content is being taught in all 3 of these activities, but you go ahead and pick how we learn that today. So the survey tool that I'm using right now is called Slido. It's free in Google Slides, and it's an extension that you can download for free. And it lets you ask your students questions in your slides. It makes them a little bit more interactive. You can get their opinions and their preferences and just really grab their attention and get them engaged before your lesson even really gets going. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and write down what I see on the screen right now, and then we'll go ahead and get started with them. So we're going to go Jamboard, Nearpod, Google Drawings, Stop, Breathe, Think, Empatico, Go Noodle, Screencastify, let's see, Epic, and Flipgrid. And what I love about this is that I have done this presentation a few times to different groups of educators. And every single time I have done this poll, each group has given me something completely different that they wanted to learn about. And I think that alone proves that this is an effective method because, I would be wasting my time and your time tonight if I showed you Flipgrid, because it looks like we already know what Flipgrid is, or maybe we're just not interested in it, but it's really going to serve us better tonight to focus on these top 3 to 5 tools and walk away with some things that we're really going to hopefully use. Okay. So let me get out a full screen here. I'm not going to spend too much more time in my slides tonight because I'm going to be out on these actual websites in my tabs, showing you how to use these tools. But I do want to show you what my slides look like quickly. Each of these resources has its own slide. And there are all sorts of links on these slides. So if you click on any of these pictures in my slides, you're going to have a link out to that website and to that resource. And remember, I'll send you an email before the end of the week with the link to my slides so that you have all these great resources in one location. Also, each slide has a little YouTube symbol here at the top. That is also a link to a tutorial on that slide specific tool. Tonight, I'm kind of going to be flying through these resources. They're going to be very, very quick tutorials of these sites, and we're really just going to focus on how they can help us in the SEL aspect. So if you have a tool that you see tonight and you're really interested in it, but you need more of a tutorial on how to actually use it, just go ahead in here to these slides, click on the YouTube tutorial. These lead to some other really great educators who have provided those directions for you already. And you could also email me at any time as well. So let's go ahead and get started with Jamboard, which is always a fan favorite and definitely one of my personal favorites as well. So Jamboard is a Google tool. It's in the Google suite. And what that means is you create a Google account. Many of you probably have Google accounts with school for your school accounts. If not, Google is free to sign up for. You can very easily, create one for free that you can use. And when you are in your Google Drive, it's kind of like a big folder where all of the documents and slideshows and drawings and things that you create in Google are kept. So this is my Google Drive, and then you can make all sorts of folders to organize. I have a WHRO folder where I work. Here's my sample folder that we're in. To create a new Google Jamboard, you're going to click on the new button. And down here towards the bottom, you'll see all sorts of options. You can create a document, which is just like a Word document, a sheet, a slide, a Google form. And then if we hover over more, we get even more options. And this orange one down here is Jamboard. So when I click on Jamboard, it creates a brand new jam. Everything in Google saves automatically. So no need to worry about saving. It's already going to be in a folder in your drive. So a Jamboard is basically a big empty digital whiteboard. It truly is like the whiteboard that you have in your class that you draw on with markers, or maybe you still have a chalkboard. It's just like that. And it sounds really simple, and that's because it is really simple, but you will see that some of the most simple tools online are some of the most powerful tools. And that absolutely holds true for Jamboard. So let me show you just a couple of the features that Jamboard has, and then we'll talk a little more about how we can use this on a social emotional level. There are annotation tools in Jamboard. You have your standard eraser tool, your pointer or your mouse. You can put sticky notes out here and change the color of them, type whatever you want. You can move those around, edit them, turn them, make them bigger. You can add images to your Jamboard. You can upload an image that you already have saved on your computer, or my absolute favorite thing to do is do a Google image search right here within Jamboard. No need to open another tab and to copy paste images in here. You can do your Google image search right here. So I'm going to search for something that hopefully is going to be safe. All right, looks pretty safe. Let me get this guy right here, and I'll click insert. And there's this picture of my puppy, which I can move around as well. Well, not my puppy. I wish it was my puppy. He's adorable. You also have access to all sorts of different shapes. This is really great if you teach algebra to students on any level and they're sorting triangles or quadrilaterals or anything like that. Of course, you can add text, and this is just kind of a laser pointer tool. All right, very, very simple to use. Now let's really dig into this, and I'll show you some ways that we can use this with our kiddos. Wrong one. I was like, why is that blank? Okay, here we go. So here's a jam that I created. FYI, my slideshow links out to this jam board. So please, please, please steal it. I made this for all of you to steal. Don't feel bad. Steal it, use it as it is, steal it and modify it, whatever you need to do, take it, use it. This is all for you. So I just brought in this picture of a plant cell diagram that I found on Google. I added some sticky notes to give my students directions. I added some shapes so that they could circle and whatnot on the diagram. I used the text feature to put a due date down here. And I told my students to add text to label the parts of the plant cell. I had my students do a government branch sort. So I added these pictures and I just drew some lines. I added these bits of text in, and I told the students to use the cursor tool to grab them and move these descriptions to the appropriate branch of government that they belong in. If you wanted to make this a little more difficult, you could always delete these words out and just have your students type in the responsibilities of each branch of government. You can change the background of your jams. So you could have the default, dots, lines, grids, different colors, an image of your choosing. So that makes it really great for when your students are completing math problems and you want to see their work, and maybe you're not face-to-face with your students, or you can't check their work until later. This is a great alternative to that. And this is where we really hit the social emotional aspect of Jamboard. I made this morning check-in that I hope you will take and use as well. So each day when your students come in, this check-in is intended for them to do first thing in the morning, either during morning meeting or just on their own time as they come in the door and they get logged into their device. You could certainly create this on like a poster or a bulletin board on your wall or something. But obviously I'm showing you the digital version of it. So students will come in, each student is assigned to one of these images. These are just pictures that I did a Google search for. And when Kaylee comes in, she's the donut, and she's going to move her donut to whatever emotion she is feeling that morning. And Rob is the football. So Rob's going to move the football to how he's feeling for the day. And then as a teacher, this allows you to, whenever you get a moment, come in here, see where your students move their symbol to for the day, and see what's going on with them. And the reason I have symbols in here and not their names is that we can keep this a little bit anonymous. Some students certainly don't mind sharing with the entire class and even the entire school how they're feeling that day and what they want to do that day. But some of our students are a little more subconscious about letting others know how they're feeling and letting others in. So if Deshaun is feeling sad today, he might not want, excuse me, the rest of the class to know that he's feeling sad. So having a symbol for him rather than his name is a really great way of getting him to show you how he's feeling without putting himself out there to the other students. And then you can see that Deshaun is sad. And at some point during the day, when you have a moment, either in person or however you contact your students virtually, you can go to Deshaun and say, hey, I saw you're sad today. What's going on? Is anything wrong? Would you like to see the counselor? Is there anything I can do to help you? Do you need a break? And vice versa. If you see that Alice, the world up here, is feeling awesome, use that as an opportunity to connect with these students too. We don't need to just connect with our students when they're having a bad day or when they're going through something heavy emotionally. We want to connect with them when they're feeling really great too. We want them to know that we're invested in their emotions, no matter what those emotions are. So we might say, hey, Alice, I saw you're feeling awesome today. Did you do something fun over the weekend? Is there something tonight that you're looking forward to? Something exciting happening in school today? And that's really going to let Alice know that you care about her and what she's going through and how she's feeling as well. Another check-in situation is the how did it go method. We do this a lot in our classrooms, just with thumbs up, thumbs down. What did you get from that lesson? Do you get it? Do you not get it? How are you feeling? This is a way to do that virtually. And it's a great way to look back and remember who those students are who were struggling. So when you have, 25 kids in your class and you have 25 thumbs in the air, it's easy to look at those in the moment and say, okay, I'll remember this. I know who got this. But then 2 hours later, after a math lesson and an English lesson and lunch and gym, you're like, uh-oh, who had their thumb down for that math lesson earlier? I don't remember, but I know somebody needed help. So this is a way to keep track of that. Your students can see that you are invested in their learning and and what they understand. And now Alice and Rob, Maya, and Alex, they know that later on in the day, you're going to take some time to sit with them one-on-one and make sure that they really understand how to divide fractions. And you've got them, and you're going to make sure that they do well on their test. You're not going to let them flail, and you're not going to let them fail. And they're going to have more trust in you as an educator, and you're going to build a better relationship with that student. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move on from Jamboard, and I know it's a lot and I know it's fast, but I want to make sure I get to at least 2 or 3 more of these tools. Feel free to ask questions in the chat or in the Q&A. I probably won't get to them until the end, but I'm definitely going to stick around for a little bit at the end to make sure I can answer any questions that I didn't get to regarding any of these tools or social emotional learning. So on that note, it looks like number 2 from our survey was Nearpod. So let me go ahead and get over to Nearpod. So Nearpod is actually somewhat similar to PowerPoint or Google Slides. It lets you create a slideshow. But what I love about Nearpod is it's one thing, it's on a website, it's web-based. So it's not like a PowerPoint where you save it to your computer and then you have to be on that computer to access it. You just log into nearpod.com or you go on the app from any device you're on, and you can find these slideshows that you have either made or you have saved from other educators. What I love about Nearpod and why I think it's a much more powerful social emotional learning tool over Google Slides or PowerPoint or Prezi or anything else is that Nearpod has a really wonderful interactive feature that gets your students engaged in the lesson and participating in the lesson. And it has a lot of more real life experiences for your students as well. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. So we're going to go ahead and create a lesson, which is creating a slideshow. And I wish I had all the time in the world to show you every single feature of Nearpod because it is incredibly deep and incredibly powerful. I do not have that kind of time tonight, but I am going to show you some of the best, what I feel are the best features in Nearpod to help us reach our students on a much higher level of engagement. So in Nearpod, you can choose to make a regular slide, which is where you can add text, you can add pictures, videos, you can add your voice, so you can give your students instructions verbally, even if you're not in the same room as them. Videos, you can add websites, just the opportunities are endless, but there are 3 specifically that I really want to show you. Nearpod 3D is great. There are all of these really cool models in here that cover some of our SOLs. One in particular that I always like to use with my students, once again, going to those cells, there's an animal cell here, there's also a plant cell. I'll click on the animal cell. I once was a 5th grade teacher, and this is a really huge science SOL. So I tend to refer to cells quite a bit. So let me go ahead and show you what that cell slide looks like. Sorry if you hear a small voice in the background. My son is here as well. Okay, so here's that animal cell. Students have the ability to click and drag it around. They have the ability to zoom in super far, zoom out super far. There is not the ability to put text or anything else on this slide, but in this case, I certainly would create a slide before this, giving directions to the students, and I would put a slide after it, maybe with some quiz questions or maybe an open forum discussion where students can talk together about what they saw. I would definitely enhance this 3D experience with other slides as well. It wouldn't just be one slide that stands on its own. Another one of my favorites, which I use constantly, are the simulations in here. There are all sorts of simulations that the students can manipulate and click on and move around. My favorite one was a matter simulation. I'll try to find it, where the students see like a container full of molecules, and the students have to add heat to see what happens to those molecules when the temperature is higher. They add ice to see what happens when that temperature is lower. And then, as we know, the molecules in the heat start to spread apart in front of our eyes. And in the ice, they start to come back together and form a solid. And I'm so sorry that this is not loading. Hopefully it does, but if not, I'll move on in a second here. And the best thing about this is that it's not a video. You know, we can show our students tons of videos of molecules and what they do when they get cold or when they're heated up. But there's nothing like that actual experiment, that hands-on experiment where kids get to manipulate the content, and Nearpod allows them to do just that. So I'm going to move on from that simulation because it is just taking a hot minute to load. There it is, actually. There we go. All right, so you can see students actually have to click and add the heat to the container, and then we see the molecules start to fly around everywhere. And then, of course, this is a great place to mention that as the teacher, we won't get to take a look at this tonight, but you do get reports. So when your students have gone through your slides and used your simulations or answered your questions, you can see what slides they were on and how they answered the questions and how they interacted with the slides. So you don't have to guess or be in person with them. You actually get to see what they were working on. And my third favorite feature in Nearpod are these virtual field trips. This is not a time in our world where we get to go on many field trips for obvious reasons, but Nearpod has that covered for you. There are field trips in here that cover all sorts of SOLs, like ancient China, ancient Greece, Jamestown, and it goes on. I'll click on Santorini just because it's right here in front of us, and it gives them this virtual option without the need for the goggles and the cart and the devices and all of that. So getting our students to use these tools in a hands-on way and using the quiz features in here and the interactive features is really going to get their attention and get our students involved in their own learning. And Nearpod is one of those tools that I always like to give my students as a choice because it's such a powerful choice. So if you're going to let your students pick their style of learning for the day, I highly suggest Nearpod, because even within Nearpod, there are just so many different options for how our students can learn. And the great thing about Nearpod is that it's not just a place where you can come and create content. You certainly can, but Nearpod itself has a very expansive library of slideshows that already exist. So you can grab one of these slides that already exists and you can use it as is with your students. You can also take one of these slides and save it to your own library and modify it a little bit. And there are lots of presentations in here that cover social emotional topics. We see distance learning, lessons about COVID, calm. This teaches our students to breathe, take a minute. If you scroll through these, there's just a plethora of really great resources in here to help reach our students. All right, so once again, I know that was a lot, but feel free to ask questions later or to view a tutorial if you are interested in diving a little deeper into Nearpod. And I'm going to get to one, possibly two more of our topics, of our tools. The next one that we have is Google Drawings. So Google Drawings is another Google tool. So just like I showed you earlier, you would go to your Google Drive, this big folder where all of your things are housed, click on New, and you're going to click on a Google Drawing. It brings up a blank drawing. It's actually quite similar to Google Jamboard. However, the difference between the two is that Google Jamboard is truly meant for to be used as like I explained earlier, like a whiteboard, a place where you can go and then your students can go and you can move things around and manipulate them and keep going back in if you want to. Whereas Google Drawing is intended a bit more for creating an image and then downloading that image to share later. And speaking of share, I should have mentioned this earlier with Jamboard. If you're not sure how to share a Google tool, it's the same for all of them. It's the same for Jamboard, for drawing, Google Slides, any of them. You always just click on this blue share button at the top right corner. And I have to name it. And then you have sharing options and you want to copy the link and you can put that link in your learning management system. You can send it to your students' emails. If you use Class Dojo or something like that, Remind, you can send it in Dojo or whatever it is that you use. And in your learning management system, if you use Canvas or Schoology or Google, a lot of these LMSs allow you to create an assignment within that LMS and just include a Google tool right there. Also something I'm not getting into tonight, but something that you can certainly ask your ITRT about, and they would easily be able to help you out with that if that's something that you're interested in. So how I use Google Drawings for social emotional learning is getting my students involved by reaching their creative side. You know, according to Howard Gardner, our students all learn in different ways. They have different intelligences that are strongest for them. Some of our students learn best kinesthetically, some learn best linguistically, and some of our students are artistic. Many of them are actually. And a lot of times when we're doing things like math and science, we forget to add that artistic side to our lessons. And if we just give our students an opportunity to create, we can get some really great things out of them. And one example I'll show you, let me go back to a drawing that I made somewhere else, is this choice board. And this is something I've kind of been talking about all night, giving your students choice, giving your students voice, letting them choose how or what they want to learn for the day. I created this choice board for my students in Google Drawings. And I just used basic things like images I found on Google. I used the text tool at the top here. I inserted a table and I just gave my students options. This is actually a social emotional choice board. You could do an algebra choice board. You could do a Civil War choice board. This one happens to be social emotional learning. So I might say to my students, all right, today we're going to learn about mindfulness. I want you to choose 3 of these activities to complete today. You don't complete them all. You only pick 3 of them. And then when the students click on these images, they're all linked out to websites that have different activities based on mindfulness. And how you link out in Google Drawing is you add an image and then you go up to the top where you see this little picture that looks like a chain link. And then you just type or you copy paste the name of your website you want to lead them to right there. And then when you're all finished with your choice board, you can go ahead and share it with your students in their learning management system. And like I've been saying all night, please, please steal this. You can keep it as is. You can put different resources in here, different pictures in here. This is intended for you to use with your students, and I hope that you do. One more way that I use Google Drawings with my students to have them create rather than me. When I taught 5th grade and we did American Revolution, I had my students use Google Drawings to create memes. Memes are really hot right now. They're really popular. Students love them. And when I was a teacher, I found my students sending each other memes, Googling memes all the time. And I was like, you know what? I could get angry and I could, reprimand my students and tell them to stop looking at funny pictures on the internet and sharing them with each other. But instead of getting angry, I'm going to use this to my advantage, and I'm going to have my students create these, but we're going to pull in the curriculum. So I told my students to go into Google, create a new Google drawing, and create a meme. And of course, I showed them that day how to use Google Drawings. We talked about what's appropriate. I showed them how to put pictures into their Google Drawings. And after some very brief tutorials on that, and by the way, that's something that your ITRT would also be able to help you with if you're unsure or uncomfortable. Our students were in there creating Google Drawings, and this actually is a meme that one of my 5th grade students created. If you can't see it, it says really attacks on T. And they were so excited to create these memes. And they, of course, had to cover one of our objectives for the week. It couldn't just be a random text and a random picture. And then I let my students use the discussion feature in our learning management system to share their memes with each other. And they had a blast. We had a whole lesson where we created these memes, we shared them with each other. And it might sound silly, but that was one of the best American Revolution lessons that we had that year, because these memes brought up so many great conversations about the American Revolution and famous Americans. So we had a conversation about what this means, attacks on T, and why would this girl have this face? Why would she be kind of unhappy about attacks on T? What does that mean? What happened? Why is she unhappy about it? Who would be unhappy about that? Is there anyone who would be happy about the tax on tea? Yes, Parliament would be. Why would they be happy? So it was really simple, but I used something my students were interested in to create a whole lesson out of it and get something more out of them and show their creative side. So on that note, I know there are a lot of resources we didn't get to tonight. I completely planned that. Please take a minute this week to go through the rest of these slides and click around on some of these resources and check them out, watch these tutorials, click on these links. And as you're going through them, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Lindsay, and she's going to talk to you about some of the social emotional resources within eMedia VA. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and she's going to go ahead and share hers.
All right. Again, everyone, good evening. I'm Lindsay, and as I mentioned at the intro, I am the manager of eMedia VA at WHRO with Janie. And if you're unfamiliar, eMedia VA is the largest digital media content library that caters to Virginia teachers and students. So we have thousands of digital media resources available for you to use with your students completely free of charge. So Janie just talked about so many wonderful tools to practically implement SEL. And I want to build on those resources by talking a bit about social emotional digital media resources that you can use to introduce and reinforce these concepts, whether you work with training teachers in SEL or are a classroom teacher and want to discuss these concepts with your students K through 12. So I'm going to take a few minutes to show you some examples of the content we have in eMedia VA. And we won't go into too much detail, just being sensitive of your time. But all these collections are hyperlinked here. So as Janie said, with the additional resources, what we don't get to, or anything we do get to when you're interested in learning more, actually using, we're hoping these are things that you can start using right away with your students. You can come back to this slide and explore a little bit about what we're going to talk about. And again, if you're brand new to eMedia VA, you might say, Lindsay, I don't even know what you're talking about. I have hyperlinked a quick start tutorial here on the right. It's just a 20-minute intro video to eMedia VA. So the site's pretty intuitive. You search and can play digital media in your classroom or embed it in your learning management system. But if you want to learn a little bit more, there's a quick start tutorial for you. So we're going to start by looking at a professional development video on SEL for those of you who, might do in-school training, or your job is to work with teachers or media specialists on SEL resources. So I have it open here. As you can see that there are quite a few videos in this collection on SEL. And again, this is a professional development collection. So we're not going to watch the whole thing, but as we're going through, I chose just one of Castle's core competencies to walk through, but we've created resources here in eMedia VA on all 5 of them. So I'm going to show some examples of self-awareness, which is really the building block of social emotional learning, because it teaches students the vocab of emotions and how to recognize and respond to their own emotions and the emotions of others. So to start, we're just going to watch a couple minutes of this social emotional video. It's a professional development video on self-awareness.
For children, learning is a social and interactive process that takes place with teachers, other students, and parents. Our emotions and relationships affect how and what we learn. Students are far better prepared to succeed in school and in life if they have learned social and emotional competencies in addition to academic skills.
We know that when kids have strong social and emotional learning skills, that they are better able to achieve academically, better able to work with others on a team, to collaborate, to manage conflict, manage stress, to achieve goals. They have better life outcomes. So it's critically important that we take this seriously if we want to educate the whole child.
Social emotional learning is basically the focus on social emotional skills, how to interact with others, how to understand yourself, how to be able to behave in a way that you're supposed to in the right settings.
When we think about self-awareness, we're thinking about how do I know and understand myself, my emotions, my thoughts, my cultural identity. What are the ways in which I feel about a certain situation? Why might I feel that way? How do I understand myself and how I fit into my family and my community and the broader world? We want to give kids opportunities to really think about their own experiences, their own emotions, and how they are dealing with those things.
Self-awareness is really being in touch with oneself. I think as a parent, the best thing you can do is to be honest about how you're feeling, because kids look at us as we're invincible. We're perfect, and we're not. And so I think having honest conversations about your struggles, whether it's at work or, a goal that you're trying to achieve and the challenges that you're having in achieving those goals, kind of brings your situation down to their level so they know they're not alone and that it's normal to kind of feel these different things.
One of the things that
So I'm going to stop it there. But again, a great resource, a great series, this entire series here to use to teach teachers about SEL. And, we're doing these series because we are hearing from a lot of superintendents and local divisions that this is really a big emphasis for school divisions now. So this could be a great series to share with teachers, having them watch on their own time, or that you could do during live instruction or a live PD with them. So I want to spend the rest of our time looking at some resources that you can actually use with your students. You can see here SEL Learning Resources, the Core Competencies Collection. And this is really aimed at, early learners, as a lot of SEL resources are. And so just you can see we have a playlist here for all 5. And you can see we are so lucky as a PBS station, to have access to some wonderful PBS Kids resources. So Daniel Tiger, Super Y. We have a separate playlist on Arthur, really wonderful for introducing social emotional learning. So I'm going to go down. So again, we're seeing some Sesame Street, some Daniel Tiger, and I'm going to show this video here on feelings. And like with the earlier one, we won't watch the whole thing because you'll get the gist of what the video is going to do. But what I love about eMedia VA, and I think is always important to point out, always check out the supplemental resources for anything in eMedia VA. Because you can see here, we have a video, but underneath we have a background essay, not super relevant for our kids. We have discussion questions. So there are a lot here. We're probably not going to use all of these with pre-K and early elementary, but to give you a great idea of some questions to use with this video. And then also an extension activity here. So it's about having a feelings hat. Students get to, do some fine motor, get up and move. They're going to stick their hand in and then kind of practice guessing emotions with their classmates. So always check out the additional resources in eMedia VA. So again, we'll just watch a little bit of this video just to give you an idea of some of the resources.
Feelings. Today is my birthday. I'm so happy. My grandma is leaving. I'm sad. My brother broke my toy. I'm mad. There are many different kinds of feelings. We smile when we're happy, frown when we're sad, cry when we're hurt, gasp if we're scared, and pout when we're mad. You show how you feel with your face. When you're happy, the corners of your mouth go up like this. What makes you happy? We can't be happy all the time. Do you think this girl is happy or sad? What makes you sad? When you're sad, the corners of your mouth turn down like this. If you look carefully at someone's face, sometimes you can guess how she feels.
So I was reviewing resources for this before we started, and my toddler came and sat in my lap. And when we went through this video, it goes on to ask questions like we already saw. Is this person angry? How do you know that they're angry? And I was able to practice with him as we're walking through. So obviously this would probably not be something we would use with the 4th or 5th grade students, but as we're talking with students about recognizing emotions in themselves and in others, this is just an example of a great series. And this is from Everyday Learning. So if you like this video and wanted to see what else, you could just search Everyday Learning in eMedia VA because there are more resources similar to that as well. So again, we have these for all the playlists or for all the resources. We don't have time to go into a ton of detail. Maybe one day we could do an online workshop just looking at SEL resources in eMedia VA. But I did want to spend some time talking about resources and collections we have that are great for secondary students. And as a former secondary teacher, and student, I guess, but teacher, it can be really difficult as there's generally fewer resources available, and conversations about feelings and emotions have to be much more nuanced, right, with our older students. So a lot of this at the secondary level is taking the time to build relationships with students and also create a healthy classroom environment where students are going to feel accepted and they're going to feel comfortable discussing really hard topics. So we have a lot of really great series that are awesome for getting students talking to one another, expressing their feelings, and practicing empathy. So you can see those here. So first up, PBS NewsHour is excellent for current events. So when I was a classroom teacher in Newport News, I used eMedia VA a ton for current events. So you can see, and obviously for current events, I have it sorted by most recently published because they're going to be the most relevant. But here's one, how students are feeling about returning to school this year. Maybe earlier in the summer, we thought it would be a normal school year. It's definitely not, right? So we could use this video to kind of transition to talk with our students about how they're feeling about things. Obviously, if we're following the news, I'm sure a lot of us have been affected emotionally by what we're seeing with the Haitian migrant issue at the border. So if we want to talk with our students about that, a great way to use current events to also tap into that empathy. Even as we're discussing policy and things related to social studies, we also want to talk to our students about maybe putting themselves in other people's shoes and what that feels like. So just like with the feelings video, Always check out supplemental resources. So we have here discussion questions. You might know if you watch PBS NewsHour, it's usually an hour-long program. But again, what I like about eMedia VA is it breaks it up into clips and then has discussion questions and additional activities for you to use. Okay, because we obviously don't have time to show a full hour news video every day with our students. If you've ever done a training with me, and I know some of you have, I've seen some familiar names, you know I love Above the Noise. It's one of my favorite series to use in general for secondary students, just to get students talking. And so you might say, oh, what does this have to do with SEL? But again, it's about building a collaborative environment where students feel comfortable with you, comfortable talking with each other. And a lot of these are on emotional issues where we want our students to practice being able to discuss with each other issues that might be a little controversial or might be really emotional or important to them. We want them to practice being able to discuss them in a more rational way. So you can see here, is it time to abolish unpaid internships? Is Earth running out of water? Should cops be in schools? I know, in my division, we had a school resource officer and I never thought much about it, how that would maybe impact students. So it could lead to some good discussion. So I'm going to show just a couple of minutes of should schools monitor students online? Just again, to show how maybe something you don't think of as a social emotional topic definitely could be.
Hey, what's up? Oh, hey, what's up? Hang on just a second. All right. Sorry about that. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, school. It can be the worst, right? You have tests, gossip, bullies. Oops, sorry about that. I thought I turned that off. Okay, and now I guess you got to worry about your boss or your school seeing everything you do online. With all the news about suicides, bullying, and school shootings, it's pretty much a yeah, duh, that most Americans think schools are less safe now than 20 years ago. But actually, schools are the
Sorry, we'll see if that keeps going. And if not,
anxiety is not decreasing, and neither is students. So more and more schools have turned to surveillance in the name of safety. I'm talking facial recognition cameras, apps that track movements, and software that monitors emails and social media accounts. And for sure, it's really weird getting a scolding email when you drop an F-bomb in a message to your friend at school. But then imagine you don't get one, because your principal decided not to remind you that they're watching. Cool. So, how far should schools go to monitor students online?
All right, so I'm going to stop it there because we're almost out of time. But again, this is a current event issue. It's a great way to have discussion with students. And again, when I was teaching, this is not something I ever thought about. And just like with others, we have some supplemental resources here. There's a lesson plan, but also this classroom viewing guide. Their more recent videos actually there's a link right here that allows you to make a copy in Google Docs. But you could also grab this quick write question, display it on your smartboard, have students respond in writing, have them do it in your LMS. How does your school monitor your activity in school or online, and how do you feel about it? A lot of students might not even know, which could maybe be an interesting research activity for them to do. The video kind of talks about how schools that have a higher population of students of color tend to have way more of this tracking, and how a lot of how different races speak differently can lead to some issues in how people are coding language. Okay, so, it could be a really emotional issue, but we're discussing it in a way that's kind of interesting. And again, just get students talking. And you can see again, all the above the noise are linked here. A few more, I won't click on this, but Soundfield, I love their 2 to 3 minute videos on a bunch of just random topics. So I always tell teachers, especially at the beginning of the year, if you oh no, we ended class 10 minutes early. Great to have in your back pocket. Just again, fun topics to get students talking. I will click, we won't watch one, just to show you, why does Sarah McLachlan's Angel sound so sad? Sorry, this was the wrong series. So I'm glad I clicked on it. I was thinking of It's Okay to Be Smart. I just saw the S in Smart in Soundfield. Soundfield is a music series. But music is emotional. It's personal to us. So these could be great to use with students. Again, why does Sarah McLachlan's Angel sound so sad? What is the Spotify sounds? This is interesting. It talks about how online streaming has kind of revolutionized how musicians make music, that now it's all about that first 15 seconds and if you can grab people's attention. So it might not be perfectly related to what you teach, but again, the whole point is sometimes we're using resources that are safe for our students, that are relevant to their lives and relevant to culture, to get them talking and feeling more comfortable and confident in our classroom. It's okay to be smart. This is the one I was talking about. Why soap is still our best weapon against COVID. Fixing daylight savings time. Why are babies so helpless? Sunlight is way older than you think. Just how do squirrels find their nuts? What is the world going to be like a lot of years from now? So again, fun ways to get students talking. I know we have 1 more minute, but I do want to point out our African American history collections and Unladylike. So, a part of SEL is also helping our students of color and other minority groups to feel comfortable and represented in our curriculum. So we have created 7 thematic collections on Black history, starting with African civilization pre-1619 through civil rights and social justice movements of today. So great playlist to come back to and explore. Some of these have hundreds of resources just to help you pick what you think is most relevant. And then also Unladylike is the coolest series. It features stories of little known women from the progressive era who changed our lives and changed the course of history. So it features Mexican American women, Native American women, Black women, white women, poor women, well-educated women, all across the board. And you can see here, there's some interactives too, thinking like a historian. This is a new one and an issue we're seeing in the news a lot about American Indian boarding schools. We've also seen some of that news out of Canada. So again, interesting ways. Let me go to just some video names. So some of these might be familiar. Bessie Coleman, Maggie Walker, who is a famous Virginian. You can see some of these have caution on them. So that's going to require a login. This one has images of lynching and murder. So probably okay with our high school students, maybe not okay for our middle school students. So just something to keep in mind. But again, thank you so much for your time and letting me share a little bit about eMedia VA. All of these are linked here. And if you have any questions, of course, you can reach out to me or Janie, and Janie can get you in touch with me. So again, thanks so much. And Janie, I will hand it back to you to close out.
All right, that's all I've got for tonight too. Again, thank you. Look for an email from me, janie.everett@whro.org, sometime by the end of this week, and we will make sure we get all of these resources out to you. And we'll stick around for just a few minutes here. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, and we'll answer those and then we'll head out. But if you've got to go, then you are free to head out now. Thank you.